Hey, it's JK. Anytime anyone asks me what my favourite boss in FromSoft's awesome lineup of rogues is, I will always say Ludwig for the intense chaotic fight, unique design, and the story told throughout. But, strangely, I've never actually used his weapon. Time to rectify that with a Tour de Horse challenge run methinks, and Moonlight as Ludwig. But, just using his weapon would be too easy, so let's make it unnecessarily difficult. I can only use the Moonlight Projectiles fired from the strong attack in tricked mode, each of which costs 1 Quicksilver bullet to fire. This won't be so bad. I mean, those projectiles have great range, right? There are some other restrictions I'm going to apply, but I'll get to that shortly. First up, Derpwig is born, and we choose the Cruel Fate origin for the arcane stats. Unfortunately, in this opening scene, there were some Mogwai in the room who get wet from the blood and transform into gremlins and invade our personal space. We get to the Hunter's Dream via the nearest shortcut, and now we can test out the weapon, brought into this world via Save Wizard. As I mentioned, the heavy attack in tricked mode fires projectiles at the cost of 1 bullet. We can charge it up for more power also. These projectiles do pure arcane damage. The L2 attack also uses a bullet, but it's not a projectile, and I'm intending this to be a ranged run, so I'm not going to use it. You can actually fire projectiles with no bullets, which will do less damage, but I'm ruling that if I have no bullets, I'm not allowed to attack. Also, we do more damage with the strong attack if we hit with the blade as well, but we'll be focusing on creating distance and fire the projectiles. If an overly aggressive enemy does happen to lunge at us and get hit by the blade, then there's not much we can do about that, but to compensate, I won't allow myself to level up strength or skill or use gems which solely boost physical damage, so that any extra damage we get from this hit will be fairly minimal. So, with all these unnecessary restrictions in place to break my sanity, we grab the usual lot of bloodstone shards, plus some nice drip, and upgrade our weapon to +2. With no time wasted, Father Gascoigne is our first opponent. This is a stark gas contrast to the Church Cannon run. The damage is okay would be a generous description, certainly not amazing. But at least we have a good amount of shots this time. The uncharged, quicker projectiles work better for this fast-moving foe. Keep distance and swing away is the name of the game, because even uncharged, our attacks are pretty slow. Unfortunately, we see an issue from the Kos Parasite run rear its ugly head. That being the arcane resistance of a lot of early game bosses, which Pappy G gains when he's in beast mode. Our damage is now very low, and we also get stun-locked repeatedly by his jumping attacks. After a thankful recovery, we finally finish him off. We can now grab Blood Gem Workshop, which will come in handy here unlike the cannon run, but not yet as we will only be using arcane gems or nourishing gems which we can't get for a while. We now open the ward to Cathedral Door and then return to the Dream to level up Arcane to 17. I could have farmed for shards before Father Gascoigne, but I opted to wait this time until we were in Cathedral Ward because there's a lot of them just readily available here, and thus we quickly upgrade to +3. Now, I sort of teased earlier that the range of the projectiles is not as good as you might think. Well, here's a great example as we try to blast off Jura but fail. I missed a lot of shots in this run because of misjudging the distance. Thankfully, our old friend here isn't as durable as he thinks he is when he decided to try no rope bungee jumping. But now, want to see some great damage? Yeah, that was a fully charged up projectile and a counter hit. 128 damage. Blood-starved beast laughed off our damage and then feasted. At least one of us isn't starving for damage. This was a slow battle of attrition. As we know, the beast has 3,460 HP, so 20 bullet-consuming projectiles do about 100 damage each wasn't going to get the job done. So of course blood bullets were required, and that's not even accounting for annoying misses like this one. The only advantage I had was being able to maintain some modicum of distance to avoid the poison in the final phase, but finishing off this beast was far from quick. In the end, I was able to keep the pressure on, somehow avoid choking, and land a final blast as it was about to spew its juices. This was tougher than I thought, and that doesn't bode well for the rest of the run. We can pump Arcane to 21 at least, and now access the lift up to Upper Cathedral Ward. There's not all that much to grab in the upper section, but we can drop down and at least grab the umbilical cord and the doll set early. I then give this Pyro Wolf some arcane in the membrane and run through to get the lift up behind the gates in Cathedral Ward and get it all nicely opened up for easy access. Of course, now that we're here we can help ourselves to some twin bloodstone shards right before the Undertaker chokeslams us right into Yahar'gul. Going here early means we can grab some more twin shards and also the Moon Rune. With yet more shards grabbed and this handy shortcut unlocked, we can upgrade the blade to +5. I did want to do Paul Pilkington while we're here, which is definitely possible with our damage, but doing this boss with minimal health reminds me why he's an idiot abhorred. After getting annoyingly one-shot repeatedly, I decided I would come back to this, but don't worry, we're still going to do him early. I sold the doll set for big monies and upgraded both our health and arcane stats, and then grabbed yet more twin bloodstone shards. These dogs in Hemwick Charnel Lane even dropped them, which I didn't know before this. The sword is +6 now. The rune workshop would also be a good thing to have, so we take on the Hemwicked Witches. This time, I don't really need to worry about which one is which one. It's a much more boring fight than last time because even a fully charged attack only does 250 damage and they teleport right after. It's a lot of running around and it took nearly 9 minutes where the only danger was me dying of boredom. They die in the end and we get the rune workshop. Dropping off the lift, we grab the Odin rune from Cathedral Ward to give us 4 more bullets, aka 4 more Moonlight Projectiles for us to fire. Arcane is now 28, and now we're back to show this dark beast our new parlour tricks. With some well-timed charged attacks, we can smack his head to stun him, almost stagger locking at points. It's also nice to not get one shot thanks to the higher vigour. It's a nice 90-second fight thanks to the fact he's not too resistant to Arcane, and the dark beast is soon deceased. With our Arcane pumped to 31, we quickly grab the Radiant Sword Hunter badge for a reason that will become apparent in a little bit. But first, Vicar Amelia. Definitely not the most friendly reindeer you'll ever meet. Is that what she's supposed to be, a reindeer? I don't know. That's what I think anyway. I honestly thought this was going to be a lot worse, but then I remembered if you can hit her head with your weapon, things can go kind of smoothly. There were lots of opportunities to hit her head, thankfully, and we staggered her, and I also continued my streak of her not actually healing at any point. I'm not sure why, but I'm definitely not complaining. We duck and weave and smack in her face with a few more heavy doses of moonlight to Vicarious to victory. We take a quick look underneath a boat and find a super crusty barnacle called Master Willem who tells us about blood. Thanks for that. Anyway, we now have 34 arcane and we can enter the Forbidden Woods. This area is pretty tough to traverse, but at least I managed to dodge the swinging spike trap. Down in the Poison Swamp area, we can grab one of the few arcane gems in the base game before heading up to grab the Canehurst summons in Yosefka's clinic. Now thankfully, the Holy Moonlight Sword does have a triangle gem slot, so we can equip this. I still have PTSD whenever I see triangles thanks to the Kos Parasite run. Damage does seem pretty decent now, taking out these basic mobs with ease. But what was not easy this time round was the Shadows of Yharnam. Our damage here is not amazing, and the issue of us being locked into place whenever we attack is very problematic here. It appears the Fireball Mage has more arcane defense than the other two, which I guess makes sense, I suppose. They were well armed this time round, it seems. The worst attempt ended because I had no vials or bullets, but the last shadow was probably one hit away from death. Because of my rules, I had to restart. Painful. To avoid this happening again, I took out this guy in Cathedral Ward for the Odin rune that gives 3 more bullets. I feel bad for this dude, but I just don't really have another option. On the next attempt, things went better. I stuck to the uncharged projectiles as the speed made a big difference in terms of survivability. It's a lot of dodging and just firing off one shot, but after a few minutes of focusing on Samurai Jack, he goes down. This becomes a bit easier now as we can just separate the remaining 2, taking down Candle Jack with just a few swings. Mad Jack takes less damage, but we almost managed to just stagger lock him. He did pull his snake out at the end, but thankfully we managed to smack it back into his trousers to bring an end to this one. I boost Arcane and Vitality a little with the echoes we gained. Remember I said the Radiant Sword Hunter badge had a purpose? Well, now we can buy the Tomb Prospector gear, because apparently Ludwig found this weapon in the tombs beneath Yharnam, so was likely wearing something similar to this. I don't know, I just think it looks cool, honestly. Surprised there's not a hairpiece though, you know, a Ludwig. Onwards to Bergenworth, where this time I get urinated on because of giving this scholar their canon death in the last run. So, good news for everyone's favourite spider is that Arcane does decent damage. The downside is that getting stun locked on one shot is not just a promise, it's a guarantee. Overall, this wasn't as troublesome as the Shadows though. Running around and getting one hit in is the only way. The running R2 projectile was the best bet. I did end up accidentally whacking Rom with the blade as well, just because the limited maneuverability and attack window meant if I didn't just attack, I was going to get swarmed. Thankfully, we got through, and then under the red hot moon, we take the bus downtown to the graveyard shift tonight. Yahar'gul is as joyous as always, but at least it's a good chance to grab useful upgrade materials. In between getting chased by angry women and blasted by lasers, of course. With the last chunks grabbed, we upgrade our sword to +9 and prepare for a fight I've been dreading. Remember how bad pure arcane damage did against this boss with the Kos parasite? Yeesh. I'd gotten some comments before about actually staying on this upper ledge to fight the One Reborn, but yeah, that didn't go so well. The Reborn supremacy was very apparent here. I'd also forgotten how awful doing this fight with unupgraded Vigor is given the awful hitboxes of the dropping corpses. I went and upgraded my health and came back to it, but of course this didn't help the fact the damage was trash. It would have been even worse if I'd run dry of bullets right as the One Reborn was on low health, leaving me unable to finish it after fighting for 8 minutes. Why does this seem to happen to me in every single run? But on the next attempt, I found the strategy. Basically, just keep circling round and firing them at its side. I was using charge-up attacks this fight because I really didn't want to run out of ammo again, so maximizing damage on every shot was crucial. We managed to get some staggers as well, which was helpful to get more charge shots in. After a solid 7 minutes, this annoying flailing mess is finished. Let's move onwards. Arcane is now up to 39 and... you know what's coming. Micolash! At least I could actually take out the puppets this time. Phase 1 was easy and... you know what? We've cheesed Micolash the last few times, so this time I'm going to fight him properly. Dropping down into the room, Micolash used Cool Beyond instantly, but thankfully I was able to avoid dying even though I took some hits. Weaving through, we dodged the tentacle attack and fired off 2 projectiles. Micolash even tried some punches and a dropkick, which I didn't even know he could do. We survived just about and managed to heal up. Using the last of our bullets, we got off 2 charged projectiles as he was attacking to finish off this tough fight once and for all. Really glad we did it the normal way for once. I feel proud. Now, as we've gotten past Micolash, we can actually get some big upgrades for our weapon. First, let's take out this Winter Lantern. This wasn't really worth it, honestly. I don't know why I wasted my time for such little reward, but just wanted to make sure we weren't light on content. With the brain drained, we grab this arcane gem and the blood rock as you might expect, but there's also a nourishing gem here to further boost our damage. With the weapon upgraded to +10 and the gems all equipped, we should be doing a lot more damage now. Given what happened on the last run, I was keen to get revenge on the Wet Nurse. It's weak to arcane thankfully, and as you can see we are getting some much higher damage numbers than anything else so far. Honestly, this was kind of fine. There's very little this boss can do to you from range. As long as you don't accidentally get caught by this attack. I certainly didn't. But anyway, after a few more projectiles, our Mergo is accomplished and the Wet Nurse is left worse for wear. Boom, 46 arcane.
This cannot be. You cannot be. That was uncharitably done. That was uncharitably done.
Come on, get the item, come on! There we go. So let's clear up the rest of the base game, starting with Amygdala. I mean, you've seen before what attacks that hit her head can do, and of course her weakness to arcane compounds that. I did have a slightly scary moment when she armed herself in phase 2, but we recovered and landed the final headshot for the satisfying victory. We then grabbed the Upper Cathedral ward key so that we could head to the orphanage. Given how weak the 2 bosses in here are to long-ranged arcane, I wasn't too worried about this area despite how terrifying it usually is. The Celestial Emissary's biggest threat was just trying to lock onto the right one and getting the smaller lads out of the way so they didn't block my projectiles. The actual damage was fairly astronomical, and as long as I got the right spacing, then these little blue men get sent back to the heavens. But if you thought the damage we did to those guys was high, the damage we got on Ebby was truly out of this world. It is wild how arcane damage goes from being terrible to almost OP at certain points in the game. Within 30 seconds, we had her below half health, and by the time she finished the phase transition, she was at about 25%. I even managed to dodge her charge attack and then strike for the win, rewarding us with a good number of echoes that left us much eldritcher than before. With Arcane at 29, there was of course one last base game boss. We took a coach ride to Baron's Castle, which was filled with a bunch of paintings of Godskin duo surrounded by love hearts for some reason. Now, Martyr Logarius. Why did I save him until last? Well, two reasons. Firstly, he strongly resists arcane, and second, I feared that the shield he gains in the second phase would deflect our projectiles. And I was justified in that fear. This fight becomes an absolute nightmare with any build that uses projectiles. The second half of his health bar usually takes up 80% of this fight. At least I can destroy his projectile swords this time. The damage thankfully isn't that bad, at least not as bad as I thought it would be. I did get lucky a couple times when he rushed me as I was charging projectiles, so he took a little bit extra damage, and otherwise it's just about timing a projectile to hit him just after he's attacked. But this fight was really close. I had just one vial and one bullet remaining when this was done. I would be pretty happy to not fight this guy with projectiles again for a while. Before we move on to DLC business, I went and got the other umbilical cord for later consumption. What a sentence. Now, for the first time, I remembered to grab the eye pendant right away. I even killed this guy, who I don't think I've killed since my early Bloodborne playthroughs. Well, it's all been leading up to this. Moonlight versus Moonlight. Derp versus Martin Horsesey. How is this gonna go? This was one of the hardest Ludwig fights I've had in a while. It's hard to say our damage is bad, but our output is just pretty slow. With our current health, we can also get taken down really quickly if we make one wrong move. Thankfully, he doesn't resist arcane all that much in phase 1, but in the second phase, Ludwig's arcane defenses double, which means that the damage we do is significantly less. Saying that, the Moonlight Projectile duel is pretty awesome to witness. I also got stung more in this fight than any other with the projectiles missing for some reason. Like here, how the hell did that miss? The AoE attacks are the best time to get fully charged up shots in, and I take the full advantage whenever possible. This was a fun and intense duel, and after many close calls, I finally managed to prove who the true Holy Blade was. Hey, now I got two of them. We activate the lift to the research hall, grab Laurence's skull, and help a sickly patient take the elevator down to the bathroom. The loving flailers stand in our way next. This boss actually has crazy high health, more than Ludwig or Orphan in fact, but they actually can't do all that much against range. I mean, the magic ones fire very slow projectiles, but they're mostly easy to avoid, and the melee ones tend to move and attack pretty slowly for the most part. To be fair, the magic projectiles did catch me once or twice when I couldn't see them coming while locked onto one of the melee users, but other than that, I didn't fail and I went on living. Lady Maria was not happy to see us. I guess I wouldn't be either if I woke up to see that face right in front of me. I tried to astrally some damage at the start, but she gave me some Elden Ring flashbacks, and not in a good way. It seemed that it was another bait and attack and punish with a projectile sesh. This was going to be a long fight, or at least I thought it was going to be. Thankfully, she has relatively low health compared to the other bosses, and her dodging just kind of became less of an issue in the latter parts of the fight. Often, as I fired the projectile, she would start an attack meaning she was locked in place and thus couldn't dodge. I still did come close to death a few times, which I barely managed to recover from, but compared to Ludwig, this was much smoother, and after a few more swings, Maria clocks out. Before we delve into the village of sunshine and rainbows known as the fishing hamlet, Laurence of Vicar Amelia is waiting for us back at the start of the DLC. His damage is very high. We get two-shot by some combos, but while fighting him, I realized something which absolutely blew my mind. I never did the Cleric Beast. Crazy how it's actually a completely optional boss despite being the first one most people will find. Cleric Moranis unfortunately crossed our streams and gets busted. So back to Laurence, who caved my head in quite a few more times. A big problem is I just struggle dodging certain attacks he does, and if you mess up a dodge in Bloodborne, you take a huge damage penalty. It's not that this doesn't exist in the other Souls games, but it feels much harsher in Bloodborne. So before continuing, I did know of another arcane gem we could get in the fishing hamlet that would increase our damage, so we decided to go grab that first. Some horny guy tried to accost me on the way, but soon met his demise before we grabbed the gem. From the Blood Gem Workshop, it looked like this was going to give us 30 more points of arcane damage, which seemed like a big upgrade, but for whatever reason it equated to 2 extra damage to Laurence, so not worth it. Once again, projectiles missing reared its ugly head. How was he close enough to smash his hand on me, but not close enough for that to hit him? Anyway, despite basically no extra damage from our supposed upgrade, I did a lot better here for some reason. Maybe because the real gem buff was the confidence it gave me. Who knows. I did stick to uncharged attacks, as being able to dodge and get the hell out of the way was more important than slightly higher damage numbers at this point. Locking onto his head and hitting him there was definitely the best call. For his crawling lava phase, he tends to have bigger openings, so at some points I even got 2 projectiles in. 2 whole projectiles. Luxury. But anyway, after enough running, Laurence finally gets put down, and this beast embraces death. Phew, thank God we don't have an even harder boss to fight next. Orphan of Kos was awful of course. Damage is pretty low because of his high arcane resistance, and in phase 2, those roll catches still get me, even after fighting him this many times. Even worse was the time I got stuck on this tiny tree and he promptly turned me into Moonlight Pate. As you can probably tell, phase 2 is the biggest struggle. There's several attack chains where once I get caught by the first attack, I just cannot seem to escape no matter how much I try dodging, and of course, I had the classic moment of this happening right as he was a few hits away from death. Phase 1, comparatively, is fine. There's actually a good number of openings to hit him, like when he does the jump attack or the wide horizontal sweep. 2 relatively consecutive hits can actually secure a minor stagger on him, not that this helps too much. My plan was to finish phase 1 with just blood bullets, so that way when phase 2 goes down, I don't have to think about messing around with topping them up. I can just focus on attacking, healing, and hopefully not getting smashed into paste. Figuring out when to attack without getting punished felt more like instinct most of the time, but after his jumps or big smashy combos usually works as long as you're at a relatively safe distance. Down to the final part of his health, he seemed to go especially crazy, and even though I didn't need to, I actually did make some blood bullets because, honestly I don't know, I was really just doing things without thinking at this point. Thankfully, this attempt was indeed the one, and after one final projectile to the face, this fight is all finished once and for all. We got 60,000 souls for winning, so at least this was somewhat cost effective. So let's end this run. We munch down 3 umbilical cords, which is a completely normal thing to do in this game, and then tell Gehrman to do one. Like any NPC style fight, he does dodge projectiles a little, but it's nowhere near as bad as Lady Maria did earlier. In fact, after the first minute of the fight, he just stops and walks into several fully charged projectiles to the face. Even in the later phases, this doesn't really change honestly, he just walks slowly and gets blasted. Shortly after, we manage to end his life, but of course the game isn't over yet. Moon Presence is up now. Can it stand up to our moonlight? Well, that really didn't present a problem. So that was pretty challenging at points actually. Slow heavy attacks can be difficult against fast aggressive bosses. Who knew? Glad I finally got to use my favourite boss's weapon though. But enough horsing around, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not consider hitting the like button and subscribing to help further our quest to reach 100,000 subscribers. Until next time, I've been JK Leeds, see ya, and have a good one.